Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm Sarah Watt.
And I'm William Chen.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. This month, we are discussing Joker, which came out this year, and The King of Comedy, which came out in 1982. The connection being that they are both about comedians, or wannabe comedians, with a much more darker trajectory than perhaps a comedy film would suggest. Both films. And they also have the connection of starring, or having in their films, Robert De Niro. And I'm sure there are many more connections to be made. So yeah, Joker and The King of Comedy. Sarah, would you like to give us an introduction to The King of Comedy?
I sure would. So, The King of Comedy, 1982, one of Martin Scorsese's early works with the delightful and wonderful Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro plays, as you say, a wannabe stand-up comic by the name of Rupert Pupkin. Whose name is continuously mispronounced Rupert Pumpkin and all types like that. He lives at home with his mother and has something of an infatuation with the talk show host and comic Jerry Langford, who is played by Jerry Lewis. So already in jokes happening, because Jerry Lewis was an actual guy playing another actual kind of guy. And Rupert Pupkin sort of ingratiates himself into Jerry Langford's world in his intense efforts to gain some screen time.
Excellent. William, tell us about Joker.
Alrighty, so Joker is a sort of origin story for Batman's arch nemesis, the Joker. It kind of follows a very similar trajectory to King of Comedy in that Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, in a very, very in-depth Joaquin kind of way, is a wannabe stand-up comedian living in his mother's, I guess, abode, looking after his mother, and also has an infatuation for, in this time, the Robert De Niro character who plays the Jerry Lewis role. He's a talk show host that is their favorite TV program, and he really wants to be on the show. And it kind of dovetails Arthur's desire for stardom or for just people to notice him with the growing social unrest that's happening in Gotham City that, I don't know about you guys, but kind of reflects our own.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, a lot of connections, both, most of them uncomfortable. Cool, okay, so it's worth stating that we will be discussing both films in their entirety, meaning that we will be talking about spoilers. So if you haven't seen either film, then I suggest pausing this episode and coming back to it at a later date. And I also think if you have seen Joker and enjoyed it and haven't seen The King of Comedy, I would highly suggest you go and watch that just to understand some of the DNA of Joker, because it very much is pulling very clearly from The King of Comedy in many different ways. So yeah, you've been warned. Spoilers abound, or spoilers ahead. Cool. Which film do we want to start with?
Can I start perhaps by saying that when we decided, probably a month ago, that we were going to look at these two films, we sort of almost pulled King of Comedy out of a hat, didn't we? And then very swiftly found out that Todd Phillips, the director of Joker, had in fact used King of Comedy as a very, very direct reference. What I found out subsequently, a friend of mine writes about film from Los Angeles and had the great honor of being able to interview Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix. And I believe that he put it to Joaquin, it's interesting that Phillips really was looking back to King of Comedy, and Joaquin Phoenix I don't know if he wasn't aware of the film, but he didn't have any clue at all that was one of Todd Phillips' reference points. And so I thought, how fascinating that we obviously are able, and the rest of the world has made these very clear connections, and yet Joaquin Phoenix has put in what I'm going to propose is absolutely a powerhouse performance in a film that he had no idea was riffing so strongly on another piece of work, particularly a quite significant piece of work by the very significant Martin Scorsese. So it'll be interesting to unpack this. But of course, some unpacking has already been done, at very least on Todd Phillips' part.
Do you guys remember when Martin Scorsese was actually attached to direct Joker?
What?
I remember there was a period of time where Warner Brothers was kind of pitching this Joker prequel / origin story, and Scorsese, his name was definitely in the hat, and I think later on it was much more of a producer role, and then he was doing something else. But wouldn't that have been crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, and considering, from my understanding of what I've read about Joker, not Joker, King of Comedy, both Scorsese and De Niro have said that it's one of the hardest films they made. There was just the draining nature of creating that film. I think to create the real sense of unease in the King of Comedy took a lot of emotional energy. So, and then for it to become a flop as well. I mean, it wasn't successful. I didn't even know it existed until I think William or Sarah, one of you mentioned it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I didn't even know he made a film called that at that time. But it's interesting that it would be something that he could potentially come back to. Both Scorsese and De Niro.
It would be interesting to know whether De Niro came on board on the project then, thinking that Scorsese was going to be directing it or not. I mean, obviously, it's well, I was going to say it's terribly clever. I suppose it's not that originally clever, but it totally works that Robert De Niro has sort of graduated from being the Rupert Pupkin character to the nasty character, the one who is quite sneering and unsupportive and ultimately unpleasant towards, in Joker, Joaquin Phoenix's Arthur Fleck. And I thought Robert De Niro's performance in Joker, well, in both films, without doubt, but in Joker was absolutely stunning. I think we probably all are, long-time lover of De Niro's work, but of late, wouldn't give you tuppence for quite a lot of stuff. It feels very much like old man needing some retirement money, let's wheel him out with his heft and he can do any old thing. But in this film, I felt like he was really acting, he was a character, he had nuance, a real personality, more than a cameo, and also really relevant given the King of Comedy connection. So it's delightful. And how wonderful that he did, anyway, do the project or stay on board despite no Scorsese.
And doesn't the film King of Comedy end with his character becoming successful, if I remember correctly? Or he's got his own show, he's got his own... he's become something through the publicity of his stunt on the jury.
Are you saying these two movies are connected? Like in the timeline?
Well, it's the thematic connections there, right? So, I mean, you could definitely read it. Apart from a name change, it's pretty much there.
Except that, I was going to say, except of course that Joker doesn't end happily. But I suppose in its way, Joker doesn't end with Fleck getting his own comedy show, but it does at least end with him very clearly becoming somebody of significance.
Getting attention,
and
which
influence.
is what he craves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the birth of the Joker, really, at the end there, with his horde of mask-wearing minions and him doing his sort of strange taekwondo-esque dance on the top of a taxi, and also the birth of the Batman as well, isn't it? It's sort of, which those were some of the parts in the film that made me go the most.
You didn't like the connection with Gotham, and
I really was like, I hate this film when it started to suggest that he was the
They
brother.
were brothers?
I was like, boo! And then when it kind of reneged on that, I was like, okay, I'm happy with that.
Although there's still the possibility. There's still the possibility
because
really
there's still
that.
There's still the photograph.
What photograph?
There's still the photograph that he finds after his mother's died that says,
you have beautiful eyes.
Love your smile, or your eyes or something, TW, Thomas Wayne. So they leave it a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah, which I like that they're going to make something ambiguous and you have to decide for yourself. But I just think it's such a crappy...
Yeah.
I hate that sort of connecting...
It's from Austin Powers 3, for goodness sakes. Like, you two are actually secret brothers.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you... I mean, it's not
dumb.
funny, haha, that you hate it, because I really respect that you hate that, and I know a lot of intelligent, like-minded people do. Me, what am I? I'm like, that's really clever. I like this. Because I hadn't read the comic books or anything. So I didn't, and I wanted to turn to my husband, but of course you don't talk in the cinema. But I wanted to turn to him to go, is this a thing? Holy mackerel, So I don't mind at all that there's that ambiguity. And I actually really enjoyed, I didn't mind that he went up to the gates of Wayne Manor and spoke to the kid. I didn't mind that he went to Arkham Asylum, and that I like that kind of interweaving of stuff. But
I don't mind the interweaving. I liked he went to see little Batman boy, whatever he was.
Yeah, and that little Batman slid down a little bat pole.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, because he was in a playground, and then you see him like going, woo!
Yeah, my audience chuckled at that actually, which is funny because I feel as though it was only TV Bruce Wayne that used to come down a pole.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
don't feel like I've never seen Christian Bale come down a pole. So the little kid in me who used to watch old Batman, obviously not contemporaneously because I'm not that old, was like, even I get that Easter egg, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just think they're trying to weave those things together. Like, the Joker is not Batman's brother. Like, that is not a thing.
No.
And try and bring more connections to their story.
But Jeremy,
doesn't need this.
What this film presupposes is, what if they were?
Oh, so dumb.
No. So actually, let's get serious on this. To be fair, and I'm really interested in talking about the characterization of Arthur Fleck as either a mentally ill individual or a psycho or whatever you want to say. He doesn't need to be Batman's brother. All he needs as a motivation to hate Batman is the potential, is his own belief that he might be the hard-done-by non-son living in the leaky apartments with the overbearing mother who's been gaslit her whole life, you could argue, because if Arthur wants to believe that his mother actually was forced into thinking that she was crazy, do you know what I mean? That's wonderful for motivation. So, I mean, he doesn't have to be Batman's brother. That would be ridiculous. But I think it's important that he has that photograph to believe that there might still be a reason for him to hate the Waynes.
I did enjoy the potential of him. I'm going to restart that because I did not enjoy him killing his mother. I was just like, oh my gosh, how more dark can this film get? But the thought of him killing his mother and then finding out that actually she was telling the truth the whole time, like that was quite a nice little tension or twist there. And by twist I mean just him being twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to be honest, on a whole, I found this film really horrible. I found it really hard to watch. And it might have been just the place I was in. Like, I'd just come off the back of a family member had died. I'd been at a funeral all week. I had another family member celebrate their 50th birthday, so it had been this very wonderful, but also up and down time. I had my sister's 30th birthday coming up. So it's kind of this and I had a big trip, a big holiday. My brain was sort of like all over the show. And then to step into this world, which was just so horrible. And so dark, and so it's like the premise of the movie is, let's imagine if Joker was a real person and how would he become how he became. I'm like, I don't really want to watch that. I don't really want to see how the comic book Joker, if we were to take that as a real person, how does somebody become that atrocious? And I'm like, for me it was a hard road.
I think my problem with the movie, and I did quite like it, but my problem is kind of the way you put it, Jeremy. Like, how does Arthur Fleck, as we see him at the beginning of the movie, become the Joker that we know and all love, right? And I don't think the movie ever gets there, because the Joker, to me, and to a lot of people online apparently, is he's a malevolent force of chaos, right? He represents anarchy and uncertainty, and that's why he's such a good foil for Batman, because Batman is logic, he's the world's greatest detective, and the only thing he can't figure out is what's actually driving the Joker.
And the Joker is irrational through and through.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, we were talking about the Killing Joke before recording, Jeremy, but one of the most famous parts of the Killing Joke is asking about the Joker's backstory. And the Joker says something along the lines of, it's multiple choice. Like, it doesn't matter where I came from. It's just who I am right now. And for the film to kind of give this version of events, and I know this isn't supposed to be a prequel to any specific Batman movie, but it just, by the end of the film, it really seemed to me that Arthur Fleck is a Joker-esque character that never reaches Joker potential, if that makes sense. Like, He's someone who's not particularly smart, he's not particularly, good at fighting or malicious, but he kind of just fails upwards through a series of mishaps, and he ends up commanding an entire legion of followers because he was in the right place in the right time, I guess.
I hear what you're saying. The second part of what you say, I don't disagree with. He does fail upwards, and it all does just sort of happen by default or by accident. But I absolutely disagree with you and all those people online who say... No, I don't disagree that you all say that the Joker is just meant to be a malevolent force of chaos, because I do understand that that's how it is. But I do disagree that there is no need for him to be originally a human being who has found his way there. And I'll tell you for why. One reason is we gave Batman a backstory. We killed his parents. We gave him a reason to become the character that he became. And the second thing is, I don't believe in life or even in fantasy that anybody is the way they are just randomly and chaotically. So certainly for me, to be able to take a character who seems to be irrational, random, chaotic, and is fearful in the, as you say, maybe not in the film Joker, but will become, because we've all seen him as Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson and whomever. He is a scary character because of all that chaos and whatnot, but I don't believe that any of that ever comes out of nothing. And I actually really loved the film. I went into it very trepidatious. I thought this can either be judged as handling mental illness in an appallingly stigmatizing way, and I'm going to have an issue with that, or I'm going to really worry about the fact that it might... and actually, I thought this before articles were coming out about people saying we're worried that there are going to be disenfranchised young white men going into cinemas in America and shooting the place up. I was worried that Joker might represent something to, as you say, individuals of today in the society that we live in. But actually, I think it was really responsibly handled for various reasons, not least of which, by my count, he kills 5 people, and all of them, there was a reason for it. So it wasn't chaotic. Any of it, not the mother, not the 3 blokes on the subway, and I'm now trying to remember who.
It's 6.
Oh, and the
He
fifth.
kills 6.
The 5th was the friend who had dogged him in.
Yeah.
And who was the 6th?
Robert De
Robert De
Niro.
Niro.
Well, who had been horrible to him and like humiliate. I mean, that was awful. We all watched that on the TV when he comes out and goes, "Look at this guy," and he thinks that's funny. I mean, that is terrible. That is brutal even by today's standards, or maybe So you know what I mean? So there was no chaos or kind of craziness in it. So then I was in the film going, this is okay by my votes. Most films kill far more random, nameless people. I mean, somebody likened it to Stallone's latest Rambo, where he just indiscriminately, kills the world. And so therefore, I don't know, I personally felt that the background for the way that Fleck becomes who he is on the cusp of being by the end of the film, for me, felt credible and it felt okay.
What I will say, I will speak to both of those points. The first one is I'll speak to is that idea of going into the film nervous about it emboldening people into violent acts, and I was very nervous about that. I thought I don't know if I'm going to like this movie, but I agree with you. I actually found the film to be far less concerning because it really showed a clear broken person. It showed where the trauma and where they come from, and how this could result in making choices that endanger others, and kind of seeing that journey. I thought, if somebody genuinely was at this place, well, it could almost be like a psychoanalysis experiment, because they would have seen this character and they could empathise but see where they've come from, and see where they end up. It definitely highlighted to me the concern of films that are more violent, that with the less consequences,
or less reasoning behind it.
And I think it made me think about The Dark Knight and how that is just so violent and people just disappearing all over the show. We become very desensitized to violence because there's no blood. So it's like, they're beating that person up and they're falling over, and that's fine. Whereas in this film, like you said, there's only 6 people that are killed. They're incredibly brutal, but it's the reality of what was going on. I mean, when he's bashing that guy's head in, I was like, far out.
Yeah.
And actually, just as a tangent, there was another film that came out this year with somebody's head being bashed repeatedly against the wall, which was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Course.
Have you seen it? Oh, okay.
But don't worry. I mean, look. I mean, it's a Tarantino film.
I expect heads to be bashed.
Exactly. But everyone's like woohooing, and it's okay.
It sort of is in a different spirit, I guess, and it earns that.
It earns it, or whatever.
And anyway, so I didn't find that hugely concerning. In regards to origin stories, for me, I mean, I love Batman, and there was a time before Marvel movies where you could generally talk to somebody and they would be able to name more Batman characters and their villains than any other superhero.
Yeah, totally.
And because they're just so iconic.
They're just brilliant. And a good Batman story has the villain origin story in it. And in a good Batman story, the villain is a dark mirror to what Batman's dealing with. So if it's Two-Face, it's about the duality of who he is and the different way you can go. Mr. Freeze is about how do you deal with the trauma of losing your family.
Or is it climate change? No,
well,
just jokes.
Well, I mean, climate change is probably more poison ivy, right? It's like we live in this city, and do we just let it all go back to nature? Or Joker, it's like, do I just let things just happen? Do we just let things happen? Like you said, logic and things, or do we just step back and just let chaos take its course? So for me, a good Batman story has that woven into it, and it's always in response. It's always a mirror to what Batman's dealing with. I think the 1992 animated series just does this so brilliantly, because every episode, the different villains are highlighted, and what they're dealing with is woven into what Batman's dealing with. Usually he's at some sort of convention where he's giving money for this thing. Or Penguin, for instance, is about wealth. Penguin is about money and wealth and that kind of thing. So for me, that's already in a good Batman story. And when you take away the fact that it's a mirror, like you take away Batman from the story.
Yeah.
And I know he's in there as a kid, but that's not Batman. It's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. You take that away, all you're left with is just this horrible story, and also there's no more fun left in it. Like the Joker is supposed to be fun,
but
for all of his psychoness. But I just did not. I sat through this movie so tense, and I did not have a good time.
But isn't it okay for him not to be fun yet? Because he's got no confidence, right? Until he's standing on that cab at the end in Times Square or whatever it was. No, it wouldn't be Times Square,
Well,
but
it was Gotham, wasn't it?
Right.
But it was pretty much New York.
And until that happens, why should there be any fun? He's not ready for fun. He doesn't have his confidence. He doesn't even realize until that moment that he has accidentally caused this uprising, And it isn't just, it's not a superhero movie. And we haven't really said that, but I think we're all on board with the fact that this is not a DC superhero movie. And so isn't it okay for it just to be a bloody good character study with one of the finest actors working today giving it his everything?
I guess so.
You don't have to agree. You can say no, not for me, but you know what I mean? Like,
well, with the fun angle, maybe the film could be more fun, because I also agree, Jeremy. I found it quite dour. In a way that even the other super serious Zack Snyder movies have not been. Like there's always been not quipping, but elements that are bring more levity to proceedings. And Joker has some of that. For example, the scene in the apartment with the chain lock, and that was
but that's
that was
dark as,
but
isn't
it was
it?
humorous, right? It was intentionally,
but it's also tension filled.
Yes,
like we're all like.
Yeah.
We're getting the sense that this character is unreliable, and he's just smashed the brains out of that guy, and is he just going to take the mickey of this guy? But then I thought that compassion and the fact that he can be a compassionate character in the right circumstances, because I noticed earlier than that, do you remember when the guy, and I can't remember the joke, and of course we wouldn't repeat it because it's inappropriate, but he makes a really the other comedian makes a really mean off-colour comment about the shorter comedian. And Arthur walks out of the room going, ha, 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 ha. And then you see his face drop and he doesn't think that's funny. And quite rightly, he's actually quite politically correct about it. And so how lovely that he then saves that guy's life, pats him on the head or whatever he does that's quite affectionate and says, go along now, I'm not going to hurt you. And you believe it and you feel such relief. And I'm like, what a lovely character. This Joker guy. I'm like, this Joker guy's a good guy.
I really liked his affliction of laughing, his Tourette's, his laughing Tourette's, whatever
Do
it
you
was.
think it was real?
You mean if there's a real affliction?
No. Do you think for the character, do you think he's putting it on, or do you think it is a manifestation of his nervous anxiety and stuff?
I thought that it was a manifestation of his...
Yeah, good. Some people have kind of hypothesized that it's put on, but I don't think so.
I guess just since you bring up tension as well, I couldn't help it but to kind of compare this Joker with other Jokers, and specifically maybe to one of the more recent ones with Heath Ledger and Dark Knight. And the thing about Heath Ledger's Joker is that there's so much tension every time he's on screen.
Yes.
Like, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And yet, maybe because of the writing, he's still really funny.
Yeah.
Like the pencil trick scene, and you just remember. I remember sitting in the audience, and the audience kind of half laughing, half gasping, and that feeling, which just was lacking from this new movie.
Yeah.
And maybe you're right. Maybe Sarah, it's not meant to be in this movie. Like maybe this movie just wants to be really, really somber and morose, but it does, to me, take a little something out of it.
I agree with that.
It's really interesting to compare, and it's inevitable as well, to compare Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix, both of whom I would say are absolute, or were bless, superlative actors. And Heath Ledger, I think, has a sort of a joie de vivre or a jollity about him that Joaquin doesn't. And we've never really thought of Joaquin Phoenix as anything other than a very, very good, serious actor.
Well, in Her, he's pretty goofy. I like that performance.
Do you think? Yeah, I adore him in everything, to be honest. Even as Jesus in Mary Magdalene. I mean, oh my gosh, which was not a great movie, but he certainly has it. But he's always seemed to be much more earnest and all that sort of thing. And so I don't really know if it's the way that the film's made, because it isn't a Christopher Nolan kind of caper. Or whatever. I think it's interesting, or maybe not interesting, only to me, but they definitely, as Joaquin's character is getting ready to go into the TV studio and everything, his hair and everything is exactly like Dark Knight hair. It isn't like any of the other Jokers. So he and as he's walking or ambling up and down those steps, no, in fact, it must be before he puts on the fabulous waistcoat and the beautiful red and green and gold. But there was definitely a lot of scenes where it was Ledger on screen. I felt
the scene where he's in the back of the police cruiser.
I think so many of them. He just looks
like
exactly like him, and he moved like Heath Ledger, and that's interesting that Heath Ledger has made such an indelible mark on the. I do think on everybody's consciousness as Joker, and I don't think it's just because he died. I think it's because he was amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I think just to transition into the King of Comedy, one of the biggest connections for me in those films is that I found both films really stressful.
Yeah.
So with the King of Comedy, from the moment that Pupkin, what's his name? Rupert Pupkin. He's managed to get into the car with the Jerry Lewis character. He's back at his house, and then when he just won't let him go, I was getting really stressed out because I was like, just the lack of social graces and awareness, and it really. And I didn't know where this film was going. I didn't know that it was going to go to the dark place that it would go. I just thought I was in for a sort of an All About Eve, mentoring movie with maybe a bit of a twist, but it was dark. So I just found it very, very stressful in the same way that I found the Joker very, very stressful.
In a bit of a Curb Your Enthusiasm kind of cringy kind of way? Or?
I think so, yeah. And I love Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So, hey, to draw a couple of comparisons, I really enjoyed how in King of Comedy, the mother's calling from off screen. Now she doesn't appear.
True.
She doesn't appear, and she's certainly not suffocated with a pillow.
Oh,
but she's always like, turn it down and all that kind of thing. He's like, Mom, I'm doing the thing, and it's exactly taken from it.
Yeah.
Anyway, interestingly, that was Catherine Scorsese's voice. That's Martin's mom, who plays Joe Pesci's mum in Goodfellas 10 years later, and it's super cute that he's like, Mom, I need a mom.
Yeah.
You won't be in this one, but just shout for him. And you can the way it sounds in the 1982 movie, you can hear that she's just on the side of the set. Do you know what I mean? Delivering her lines. But I thought that was a really cute similarity.
Yeah.
I'm interested to talk about the relationship with the women.
Yeah, because there's the one that I was thinking of just then was the assistant, Jerry Lewis's character's assistant, or manager, or whoever she is, the one that has to deal with
Pupkin,
at the office.
Stressed me out
so much.
She handled that brilliantly, though. Yeah. I thought she was amazing. I never thought she was going to be in danger because I thought she's got this.
Yeah. She's like, thank you. We'll listen to your tapes, and when you're ready, when you've got something on, we'll be happy to check it out.
She felt like a really strong female character to me for 1982. And let's bear in mind, I grew up on films through the 80s where I just assumed that women characters were the way that they were. So to watch this back now is quite reassuring. But yeah.
And there's quite a few female characters through that whole section, wasn't there? Because there was the receptionist, and then there was...
Gosh, that poor receptionist. I know. And just to see her expression, seeing this dude come back again, just...
And it took her at least
go for the
3
phone. Go
goes
for
to
the-
get his name right, I'm pretty sure. So, but I mean also the relationship with the love interest. Because the thing in Joker, I mean, some people have been a bit kind of derisory about Joker and been like, oh, we didn't need the revelation spelt out for us that it was a fantasy. Well, I did.
I did because I was annoyed. I was like, he's being so creepy. Why would she respond this way? And then when it was revealed, I was like, oh, thank goodness.
I really, really did not.
Didn't like, what, the flashback?
The flashbacks, the flashback. Because the moment where he goes into her apartment and she says, you're Arthur Fleck, right?
Oh, yeah, I figured
that
that
was,
was...
that was horrifying, and it was such a powerful moment.
Right.
And then it does the thing, the Fight Club thing.
Yeah.
And it's,
the Fight Club thing.
Such clumsy, ham-fisted filmmaking.
Yeah, fair
It's
enough.
Like, hey,
fair
guys,
enough.
did you get it?
Yeah.
If you didn't,
But you know
this
what?
is it.
But you know what? Maybe somebody like they screen tested or something, and they're like, "We need to make it really clear." I mean, I hear you. I didn't object to it so much that it ruined the film for me, but I agree it was unnecessary because you're right. It is such a great moment when he's in there.
And I just liked the moment the first moment. I liked that revelation. I was like, oh, thank goodness, because I was thinking this relationship is ridiculous. Like, look at her. She is freaking amazing and beautiful and so socially well-rounded.
Yeah.
And here's this weirdo, like
Yeah.
he's just very strange. And like the way that he makes weird comments and she's like laughing along. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I was quite happy, regardless of the flashback. But I agree with you, it didn't need the flashback.
But
Not
it
for
was
me anyway.
but the relationship was credible to me, even if it made me go, whoa, steady on, love. Like when she's when they're looking at the TV and she's like, well, I think a whole bunch of people had it coming. And then you realise she didn't say that, and that's a manifestation of his own subconscious. But I really liked that relationship was there for him because it made it all the more devastating that it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think that the downside of King of Comedy, which can't really be blamed because it came first, but the downside for me of King of Comedy is it has that relationship with the woman and he's trying to get this relationship off the ground, but she does exist. She's not a fantasy for him. Do you know what I mean? The Diahnne Abbot character.
I mean, weren't they really together in real life? I think
him and Diahnne Abbot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. They're either married or they were a couple.
Oh, that's not his current or recently ex-wife, though, that he's been with for donkey's years.
Oh, I don't know.
But maybe they were.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't change your point. I'm just bringing it up.
but the other weird thing for me in King of Comedy is the Sandra Bernhard character.
Oh, she was brilliant.
She was fantastic.
She added a whole dynamic to that
But
movie.
she's
that was brilliant.
also a little bit cray-cray.
Totally.
I'm probably not allowed to say cray-cray, and I apologise to listeners. I don't mean to be stigmatising or inappropriate. And it's difficult when you're talking about, like, films around mental illness, and I will try to use appropriate language. But she is also obsessive.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether that dilutes Pupkin ever so slightly, because Arthur Fleck is the only one in his film who is having the delusions and the I guess the psychosis and all that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I loved her character, and I loved the fact that she came from money, so she had
Yes.
she had all these resource, and she had just become obsessed with the Jerry Lewis character. I can't remember.
Jerry
his-
Langford, yeah.
Do you know that they had a different name, and he asked them to change it because he knew people would call out his name on the street, and a lot of the people that call out Jerry on the street
so
were just
cool.
genuine people.
Right, I
seeing Jerry
wondered.
Lewis.
That was so cute.
Hey, Jerry.
The
Yeah.
scenes, they were wonderful scenes where he
Yeah.
comes down and he's walking along and he was so witty.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I was like, I would use that line. That is fantastic. You know, you should see me in my white tulle or whatever it says, you know. But, and I wondered whether those were just civilians and they're just like, all right, rolling. And, that was wonderful.
And Sandra Bernhard, I mean, a lot of it was improvised, so a lot of her stuff was
Right.
improvised, and it was just terrifying. And the fact he's like sitting there completely taped up,
Yeah.
and she's like, "I've dreamed of this moment
Yeah.
for so long,"
And it was totally great. It was totally great.
Yeah.
And I think absolutely in its 1982 context, or just within the context of King of Comedy, that totally works for me.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm just saying by way of comparison,
Yeah, fair
dear
enough.
old Arthur Fleck not having any ally, nor the actual relationship, is much darker and more painful, you know?
I think in 1982, you know, you can get away with Sandra Bernhard running down the street in her underwear and
Yes.
high heels.
Yes.
I don't think you can get away with that.
No.
I mean, it's New York. Come on.
Yeah, that was, she's super fun.
But the oh gosh, that entire sequence, because it keeps cutting back, right? Because you never really see Pupkin's show until the very, very end.
Which is
Yeah.
nicely done,
Which is
isn't
awesome.
it?
Yeah.
You see him
Cuts
go
away
on,
right there.
And
you
he's
see him
funny,
come off.
and he's really
Yeah.
funny,
Yes.
and because you don't see him at all, eh? You never see any of his
Because
comments.
you
You
see
only
the
see-
FAI agent's like reaction to it.
Yeah.
So you see when he goes into the
Yeah.
bar and he turns, can I change the channel?
Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
impressing
But then it keeps intercutting back to the house. And to see Jerry Lewis, I think he does such wonderful things with just his face. He can't speak. And you're just stewing in like fury and kind of just the ludicrousness of this entire situation. And of course, when he finally grabs the gun and it fires nothing but BB bullets, and she kind of winces when it hits her belly. Like it's such a comedic moment played beautifully.
Yeah. Isn't that excruciating when they go to the house?
I know.
And I was like, to my husband, I was like, is this a fantasy? And he was like, of course it is. And then we were like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
And what makes that scene so brilliant is the girl that he brings, and the way that she realizes when you start seeing her face, oh my gosh, this is not planned. And also the butler character, and how he's just so angry and embarrassed, and like, and you know that moment where he can't open the door?
Yeah.
That wasn't scripted. He just genuinely couldn't open the door. So then when Jerry Lewis's character calls him a name or something, you know, it's just improvised. There's a lot of like moments in that movie that are just,
and he just stands there holding a golf club, like, what the
Yeah.
hell is happening?
Yeah.
it's that was so that just the growing sense of unease and like, oh man, I just couldn't. Yeah, those moments for me were just brilliant because it was so horrible to watch. And I tell you what, the film starts with the sequence of people sort of harassing Jerry Lewis's character, and then they're trying to get into I think Sandra Bernhard's character's in his car.
Yes.
And she starts screaming, and then she's banging on the window, and then it kind of freezes.
Yes.
And then the title sequence happens.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, this is a really strange image to freeze on. Like, it's very aggressive. He's got this fan obsessing over him, and of course that's exactly what the film is going to become. So it's quite a good
But we
introduction.
don't know that she's really a fan at the time.
No,
we
no.
think maybe she's a girlfriend or something,
Yeah.
and she's already in the limo, and she's like, let me out of here. Or it was very odd. It was very brave.
Yeah.
And it's very, I guess, post-70s kind of, you know, Scorsese and Coppola and all those guys doing their thing in their most authentic way, you know.
It really reminded me of a lot of films at that time. So when she's sitting there having the dinner and there's candles everywhere, I mean, that's exactly like 1982's Blade Runner with the candle scene at the top of the pyramid, and also a lot of the intercutting and fantasy sequence and just the harshness of the cuts was very of that time. Like, again, like think about All That Jazz, which is all about fantasy sequences, and there's definitely a lot of things of its time, and I'd be interested to know how much of it was just the way that Scorsese rolled, or how much of it was stylistic choices that were very much of their time.
It's Thelma Schoonemaker, isn't it, who is his regular editor, I think, but she's not his editor yet in that film. She's in the credits, and I can't remember. She's not post-production supervisor, but something or other post-production-y, but not yet editor. But that sort of thing is interesting. Can I just say, though, I really want to give a shout-out to Todd Phillips, whom I did think was just a hangover-type guy. I thought Joker was a beautiful film.
Absolutely.
I thought it was stunningly photographed. I thought that the production design, goes without saying, was amazing, but also the costuming, particularly at the end when he is in the yellow. It's almost Dick Tracy-like, actually, the yellow, the burgundy, and you notice that in the background of these, quite the, like, Gotham City as he's making his way to the studio is very kind of like blur, but there's bright yellow and bright red in the signage around everywhere. And I thought that was beautiful. And I don't even remember the music, other than I thought the music was stunning.
I agree with you. It's impeccable filmmaking.
Yes.
And the pacing of the film, the way it builds. I mean, it was a long movie, and I felt that it was long, but I didn't feel disgruntled that it was long. I was quite happy to be sitting there for however long it was. And the scenes in this film, in the TV studio, were just wonderful to look at.
Yes.
And my only issues with the movie is the kind of way it represented the Batman mythology, and also just the darkness of it, and just how depressing it was to sit through. Which again could very much be where I was at the time.
Oh, look, I think it's supposed to be. I mean, okay, we haven't really talked about the underlying themes and whatnot, but I wonder how many people watched it and went, yeah, maybe the rich people had it coming.
I did enjoy the commentary on Batman coming from wealth, because I don't think that's been something that has really been addressed in this way in the Batman mythology. It was definitely, it felt like a bit of a cheap shot to make Bruce Wayne's father's such an asshole.
Yeah.
Well, because in there, I rewatched Batman Begins the other day because I had it in my head that it was an amazing film, and I rewatched it, and it wasn't amazing at all. But it was the first of the Nolan kind of goes, and so I'm going to rewatch Dark Knight and enjoy that a bit more. But I did rewatch Batman Begins because I wanted to see, okay, well, what is Bruce Wayne's origin story? And oh yeah, wonderful father.
Yeah, Thomas Wayne is like a living saint in that movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's a philanthropist, a doctor. The Wayne family ran the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, he's kind. He's like, when you fall, you get back up,
Yeah.
and it's how you
What do
learn.
we do when we
and
fall?
you know, like he's the greatest dad and all the stuff.
I wouldn't mind if that the storyline of Thomas Wayne being not as great as he was being a Batman story, like and him like it's like the Iron Man sort of figuring out about your father issues. I think that's okay, but to give that to Joker, I just felt like it was a bit of a cheap shot.
No, I disagree, only because Joker is from Joker's perspective. You know, if you look at the Joker film as being Joker's lens, it isn't unreasonable that he would, as I say, think he might be the brother, think that this guy might have been the dad who did him a disservice. And so for him to only see things through that lens is credible, because we are talking, whether we like it or not, we are talking about an origin story. And Todd Phillips and his writer has... they're trying to give us reasoning for why Joker is how he is. And so if it is because he's completely wrong about the world, then that's fine, but that's why. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
For me, I guess I wanted the film to really go places. Joker, that is.
Yeah.
And it didn't. I felt like the ending was way too safe, if that makes any sense. Because yes, like huge social change is happening, but in terms of what's happening with our characters, I can't believe... they did the Wayne murders again with Martha Wayne's pearls flying off the screen again. I can't believe that they did all this stuff in service of something that we've seen a billion times. And wouldn't it be cool? And maybe this is just a what if thing, but if they really went out there and differentiated themselves and said, like, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something unique and different, and maybe Bruce Wayne dies. Or maybe Joker does end up shooting himself in the head on TV. And it's just this really weird, oddball kind of diversion from the DC universe that is unique and stands on its own. It doesn't have to have these stupid connections to the Batman mythos.
Yeah.
Even though Batman, is in it. You can tell a story that doesn't have to feel beholden to continuity.
I don't know if you know this, William, but in Hollywood, something they're driven by quite a lot is money. And so you don't really want to cut all your options off. Because it felt very much to me like the minute that they do a Joker 2, The Uprising, or whatever the heck, I'm in there. It'll be disappointing, I tell you that for free. But I'm in there because I do want to see the trajectory that was so hinted at, but then we were so robbed of because the titles rolled. And you can't get away with completely... Well, actually, in some films like Terminator and whatnot, you can, can't you?
You can have doing it.
You can just have a completely different thread, though, that goes off into a crazy way. Non sequitur, but the old Linda Hamilton one that's coming out soon, and I'm seeing it on Wednesday, and I can't wait. You know what I mean? I do get that.
Which just ignores Terminators 3 to whatever.
Oblivion, which is good that it does. But yeah, so it's taking liberties. But I mean, look, I hear what you're saying, and I think there is a world where that would have been an amazing and brave and interesting thing to do. But this is not that world, you know?
And just one more thing I want to bring up, Sarah and Jeremy, is... what do you think about the endings of King of Comedy and Joker? Specifically, do you think they're both fantasies?
Like they're all in their mind?
Because King of Comedy ends on that really weird moment where, Rupert is out on stage and the MC just keeps repeating his name. And he's kind of standing there a little uneasy and a little, kind of, okay, I'm in the spotlight now. I'm famous. What do I do now? And then, I don't know about you guys, but my mind flashed back to all the fantasy scenes and thinking, oh gosh, was that whole final sequence all in his head? And similarly, Joker, I don't think Joker's as overt as that, but just the final scenes with him and the therapist running around Arkham, kind of it really, really has a lot of visual, mirroring with his fantasy scenes before. And there's a lot of discourse about, did him going on the show and killing Robert De Niro, did any of that actually happen? So, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't like, and they woke up and it was all a dream. Quite honestly, that's not achieved from me. So.
I just feel like the question that it poses, I don't mind it so much in The King of Comedy, because I do feel like there is a sense of...
And now what?
Yeah, it's just sort of a bit more unsettled. But the Joker, I'm like, if it's all in his head or it isn't, I mean, it's not like Inception, right? Where the question is the film. Like, what is reality? Yeah. That's the question, and it ends with the spinning top. It just seems like a bit of a...
I think we have to assume that it's real. We don't have to, but that's my choice too. Because we know that Joker becomes something, and therefore all that stuff has to happen in order for him to become what he becomes, including the locked up in Arkham Asylum to then develop his skills, presumably, for Joker 2, The Uprising, and which I am writing as we speak. No.
Yeah.
Man, Joker made so much money, you guys.
I'm going to go see it again.
For an R-rated movie, I guess, is it the comic book thing, right? Because if you think about King of Comedy, which, as you say, Jeremy, is the absolute flop, like, understandably so, it is an uncomfortable movie to watch, maybe back in the 80s as well. Whereas Joker, think about it, if you didn't have that Batman connection, it wouldn't have made God knows how much money it's made.
And it's kind of a mean trick, actually, on all the people who didn't read ahead and realise that it is not a superhero movie. And I have no sympathy for them, because I thought it was a terrific film in and of itself, and I liked the way it was handled. But I wonder how many are just kind of either disappointed or just kind of like sideswiped and like, whoa, that was not what I was expecting. I don't know.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context through SoundCloud, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Apple Podcasts. You can follow us and subscribe to us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, which are all great places to let us know what you think of this episode, or give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then, ka kite anō.